On August 11th, a small Philippine patrol vessel sped across the waters at the contested Scarborough Shoal, pursued by 2 Chinese ships, one of which was more than triple its size. Yet the Philippine boat refused to yield. Footage of the chase, captured by a journalist aboard the Philippine patrol vessel, shows the crew attempting to escape as the Chinese vessels kept on drawing closer by the second. Then, either by recklessness or deliberate aggression, an unprecedented incident stunned observers. Suddenly, all eyes turned to the South China Sea. Within days, American warships arrived in the region. China answered with an even larger deployment of its own. Now, with rival powers squaring off and naval guns aimed across contested seas, many are left wondering when the next clash will erupt. While patrolling alongside the Philippine Coast Guard, relatively near the island of Luzon, local journalist Rafi Tima spotted 2 vessels rapidly closing in on his ship. Their aggressive maneuvers left little doubt about their intent to drive the Philippine crew out of the area at any cost. Soon after, Tima reported on social media, quote, "Chinese Coast Guard 3104 and People's Liberation Army Navy Warship 164 in hot pursuit of BRP Suluan, repeatedly crossing each other's paths during the chase. The large Chinese ship came dangerously close to the PCG ship on multiple occasions, the closest around 6 meters, prompting the PCG to take evasive action." His account was backed by photos and video clips showing just how extreme the Chinese approach had become. Both vessels can be seen rushing to position themselves on either side of the much smaller Philippine patrol craft, seemingly to box it in. The footage also captures China Coast Guard 3104 firing its high-pressure water cannon. Experts noted that the jet's force was strong enough to cause serious injuries, even fatalities, had it struck the Philippine vessel directly, underscoring the danger of Beijing's tactics and raising questions about how far Chinese forces were willing to go. After several near misses, in which the PLAN destroyer nearly rammed the BRP Suluan head-on at high speed, the Philippine crew executed a sharp evasive maneuver. The sudden turn caused the much larger destroyer to swing across the bow of its own Coast Guard ship, resulting in a violent collision. The destroyer sustained a moderate gash along its hull, but the China Coast Guard 3104 had suffered catastrophic damage. Its bow was crushed, the ship was listing, and personnel who had been standing near the point of impact moments earlier were nowhere to be found. Even then, the Chinese warship did not stop. Instead of assisting her crippled sister vessel, it pressed on, making additional close passes at the Philippine cutter until the BRP Suluan managed to escape. Journalists have described the force deployed by China as overkill, pointing to the massive disparity in size and capabilities between the vessels involved in the incident. The Philippine BRP Suluan measures just over 146 feet and is lightly equipped, carrying no weapons. In contrast, China fielded 2 far more formidable ships, the Type 056 corvette of the Coast Guard, stretching nearly 300 feet and armed with cannons, missiles, and torpedo tubes, and the Type 052D destroyer, a 500-foot warship bristling with advanced systems, including 64 vertical launch shells for missiles and a 130mm naval gun capable of long-range strikes. There appears to be no justification for why China opted to employ these particular vessels for the encounter, especially when considering that the Philippine crew's mission was reportedly simple, limited to distributing aid to local fishermen operating within the country's exclusive economic zone. However, China's pattern of harassment in the South China Sea is not precisely new, and this incident only reinforced what many Philippine sailors already knew. Even when conducting routine tasks, no vessel is ever safe. Still, analysts have noted that China's tactics have grown increasingly aggressive and dangerous, especially around contested territory such as Scarborough Shoal, the area believed to be the focal point of this latest clash. Just last year, a similar confrontation took place at 2nd Thomas Shoal. There, Philippine Navy inflatable boats attempting a resupply mission were intercepted by China Coast Guard personnel. Upon being boarded, the encounter turned violent. Chinese sailors were said to have pulled out blades and arbitrarily towed Philippine vessels. In the chaos, a Filipino serviceman lost his thumb and his hand was crushed between 2 ships. That scandal briefly produced a fragile agreement aimed at avoiding future clashes. But the latest collision suggests Beijing has returned to a far more offensive posture. keeping its strategy opaque and leaving more than one wondering what type of force it's willing to deploy next. Immediately after the collision, the Philippine crew radioed the Chinese sailors, offering medical assistance if needed. There was no response. Since then, Beijing has refused to release details about the condition of the ships or confirm whether the Chinese crew members seen on the bow of Coast Guard Vessel 3104 during the crash were safe. China has also denied responsibility, instead accusing the Philippines of recklessly sailing at high speed. Beijing media has gone as far as suggesting that the Chinese vessel's violent maneuvers, risking collision, were in fact done to try and protect the Philippine boat. Neither the Philippine government nor independent analysts find this claim credible. Beijing hasn't even confirmed that a crash took place at all, even when the released video of the incident not only confirms it, but also heavily suggests that it was a direct result of China's own aggressive maneuvers. Analysts have warned that if such tactics continue, a major escalation could be on the horizon. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has drawn a red line. If any Chinese action results in the loss of life of a Filipino service member, it will be treated as an act of war. This position is reinforced by the 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty with the United States, which obligates Washington to respond militarily to attacks on Philippine forces. Earlier this year, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio reiterated that commitment, telling Manila that the U.S. pledge to defend the Philippines is, quote, ironclad. That commitment has already been put into practice, and just days after the incident, American warships arrived in the same waters, signaling that America is prepared to back its ally, no matter what comes next. According to the Philippine Coast Guard, 2 U.S. Navy warships, USS Higgins, a guided missile destroyer, and USS Cincinnati, a littoral combat ship, were patrolling near Scarborough Shoal just 2 days after the Chinese vessels collided. Both are modern, highly capable ships designed for rapid combat engagement if required. China quickly accused the United States of deploying these ships to, quote, track, monitor, warn, and expel Chinese forces from the region, calling the operation a violation of its sovereignty. The U.S. Navy rejected that claim. Lieutenant Sarah Merrill, spokesperson for the 7th Fleet, stated, quote, China's statement about this mission is false. The United States is defending its right to fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows. Nothing China says otherwise will deter us. These patrols were part of a freedom of navigation operation, missions designed to peacefully challenge what Washington deems unlawful maritime restrictions. While such operations are not unusual for the U.S. Navy, analysts noted that no similar mission had been conducted near Scarborough Shoal in over 6 years. This timing suggested the mission was not only routine, but also a subtle warning to Beijing that the U.S. is ready to project power in defense of its allies if Chinese aggression continues. However, such shows of force appear to have had the opposite intended effect, and rather than de-escalating tensions in the region, these tactics have appeared to prompt China to respond by deploying even more naval and Coast Guard assets. Not long after U.S. warships appeared near Scarborough Shoal, Philippine officials reported a sharp uptick in Chinese vessels across the region. However, it's still unclear what Beijing's next step will be. Some analysts see the deployment of new Chinese vessels as a direct response to the U.S. presence, which, compounded with a recent large-scale joint exercise between the Philippines and Australia involving more than 3,600 personnel, could have Chinese officials worried. Others interpret a different strategy, centered around damage control. According to Anita Abbott of the Asia-Pacific Security Innovation Forum in New Zealand, quote, increasing its vessels shows an image repair maneuver. It's defensive signaling. Regardless of Beijing's motives to send out more ships, experts agree that nations in the region must proceed with caution. China still holds a considerable advantage over the South China Sea, and before the Philippines can effectively counter it, the nation will first have to deepen its partnerships, not just with the US and Australia, but with a broader network of allies worldwide. In the meantime, Manila has opted for restraint. Philippine officials have stated they will not deploy Navy warships to the shoal, aiming to avoid a more dangerous clash with China. Instead, diplomats are attempting to leverage the incident into a new peace agreement with Beijing. How long this cease to aggression will last remains to be seen.